We can begin with Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Vijanavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadire Nastavraya Shubhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttamashloke Vakya Bhagavati Nishtiki. Good morning.
Good morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
This is Maria.
This is Maria.
She's never been to a Bhagavatam class before, so
Okay.
she's getting the grace, your wonderful smile and wisdom, and Krishna will empower you to share with us some wisdom.
Well, I'm begging for your empowerment from all of those nice qualities that you have, Prabhu.
Continue to bless
Hariva.
pure devotional service.
Wonderful. So today we are reading from the 10th canto, chapter 41. We'll be reading beginning from text 43. Translation. The two lords then went to the house of the garland maker Sudama. When Sudama saw them, he at once stood up and then bowed down, placing his head on the ground. After offering them seats, bathing their feet, Sudama worshipped them and their companions with arghya, garlands, pan, sandalwood paste, and other presentations. Sudama said, "O Lord, my birth is now sanctified and my family free of contamination. Now that you have come here, my forefathers, the demigods, and the great sages are certainly all satisfied with me. You two lords are the ultimate cause of this entire universe. To bestow sustenance and prosperity upon this realm, you have descended with your plenary expansions. Because you are the well-wishing friends of the Supreme Soul of the whole universe, you regard all with unbiased vision. Therefore, although you reciprocate your devotees' loving worship, you always remain equally disposed toward all living beings. Please order me, your servant, to do whatever you wish. To be engaged by you in some service is certainly a great blessing for anyone. Shukadeva Goswami continued, O best of kings, having spoken these words, Sudama could understand that what Krishna and Balaram wanted. Thus, with great pleasure, he presented them with garlands of fresh, fragrant flowers. Beautifully adorned with these garlands, Krishna and Balaram were delighted, and so were their companions. The two lords then offered the surrendered Sudama, who was bowing down before them, whatever benediction he desired. This will be the verse of today. Sudama chose unshakable devotion for Krishna, the supreme soul of all existence, friendship with his devotees, and transcendental compassion for all living beings. Not only did Lord Krishna grant Sudama these benedictions, but he also awarded him strength, long life, fame, beauty, and ever-increasing prosperity for his family. Then Krishna and his elder brother took their leave. And I'll go ahead and add the purport to this as well. We can see a clear difference between Lord Krishna's dealings with the nasty washerman and his dealings with the devoted florist, Sudama. The Lord is as hard as a thunderbolt for those who defy him, and as soft as a rose for those who surrender to him. Therefore, we should all sincerely surrender to Lord Krishna, since it is clearly in our self-interest. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 41st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna and Balaram Enter Mathura. Hare Krishna. So we'll go ahead and do the Sanskrit for text 51. Sopi vavre chalam bhaktim tasmin eva kilatmani tabakeshu cha sodhradram bhuteshu cha dayam param. Translation: Sudama chose unshakable devotion for Krishna, the supreme soul of all existence, friendship with his devotees, and transcendental compassion for all living beings. And before I begin to speak, I'll offer prayers to all of our teachers and all those who have endeavored to bring this knowledge to us. Om Jnanatimirandasya Giranjana Shavakaya Chakshu Militanina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Japatam Nena Bhutale Mayam Rupam Kadamayam Zaire Swampadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagra Ragnata Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savatutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Krishna Kamvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudevi Pranamami Haripriye Vanshakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vacharine Devi Shesha Shunyavadi Pastatya Deshatvari. Wonderful. Yeah.
Good duty. Last night we watched. There was a broadcast of the GBC meeting all these exalted, I mean, just like Namasharanya, all these amazing sages and yogis and leadership people in Hare Krishna movement and sannyasis, and Radhanath Swami was there. So they called upon him to speak for 5 minutes. I was thinking, that's not possible. He never speaks for 5 minutes, but he spoke very briefly, very wonderfully. And he said, listen, we're having these meetings and there's going to be discussion and there might be some disagreements, but let's be respectful and loving and pray to Krishna to show us how to make these decisions we have to make for the organization of the Hare Krishna movement, right? Very sweet, very short, you know. Mm. And here's, you know, the most incredible gathering of people you can imagine on the planet. And they asked Maharaj to speak, right? And I was reflecting about, you know, where Maharaj got the Hare Krishna mantra? Yeah, he goes to the Holy Land of India. He travels halfway around the world. He's in the mountains and he's up in the holy river, the Ganges, right? He's sitting on a rock in the middle of the river, right? Mm-hmm. This is like testimony. When you hear the end of this, you say, how wonderful is Krishna? That's why we say these things. So the Lord spoke to him through the Ganges River and gave him the Hare Krishna mantra. At least that's what I've heard. Have you heard that too? Yeah. Yeah. So he received the Hare Krishna mantra from the Supreme Lord through the river Ganges, right? Now, just how wonderful is Krishna? On the other hand, I was in Brooklyn, living in Brooklyn, which is not maybe the most holy place on the planet, you know, especially that neighborhood. And I was at a friend's house and I was going to the bathroom, which is probably not the most sublime and, you know, purified and holy, sanctified situation. You don't go to the bathroom for, you know, prayer, and maybe somebody do. Like, and in my friend's bathroom, there was a stack of comic books. So whenever I was there, I would look at the comic books. There were about 7 or 8. I don't know if you ever hear of a Zap comic book. You know what that is? No, Zap. It's not Donald Duck. It's not Mickey Mouse. These are the most degraded things you can imagine in a comic book. So I'd been there many times and I had already looked at all the comic books, right? And in that stack, there was one BTG magazine, which I had studiously avoided. When I had already read all the comic books, when I was there that time, I said, well, I'll look at this. I looked at the BT. That's where Krishna gave me the mom, Krishna. Hare Krishna much. I've been chanting it day and night for the last 50 years, you know. But I mean, how wonderful is Krishna. That he can give Radhanath Swami, like one of the most exalted persons on the planet, in the most auspicious and holy and sanctified, you know, lands, in the most holy river, and, you know, mystically give him the Hare Krishna. I got it from, I went in the bathroom looking for a comic book, you know. He gave me Hare Krishna. How wonderful is Krishna? I'm sorry. Just to share. We got to look at the internet and see Maharaj speaking to the entire GBC, right?
Wonderful.
What?
Wonderful.
Look at it. You'll see it on the internet.
Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. So, to give some context for another instance of Krishna's wonderful activities, this book is referred to as the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it was compiled over 5,000 years ago. And the essence of it is speaking about the Lord and how people can develop that relationship with the Lord. And so in this instance, Krishna has entered a place called Mathura, and there are different events that take place. So one of which there is a washerman. And this washerman was very inimical. He went up to the Lord. Actually, in this case, we understand through a lot of other contexts that Krishna is actually the supreme personality. And so he, although Bhaktaram Yagatapasa, that he is the owner and proprietor of everything, he is so free from false pride that he humbles himself and asks for something from this washerman. Even though everything the washerman has is already the Lord's, but he asks just to give an opportunity for the soul to offer love to him. But this washerman was in a very inimical state of consciousness. It started chastising, started threatening the Lord, actually. This is the illusioned conditioned state. And so the Lord, it's very interesting how Sudama states, because you are the well-wishing friend and supreme soul of the whole universe, you regard all with unbiased vision. Therefore, although you reciprocate your devotees' loving worship, you always remain equally disposed towards all living beings. Bhagavad Gita also says this in Samaham Sarvabhuteshu, that he is not envious to anyone and that he's equal to all. But those who render service to him in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to them. So with this washerman, the washerman reciprocated with in the mood of an enemy. And Krishna responds
Want to be an enemy? Okay.
in kind. Similar to how a father will respond to a child that's misbehaving. One may see from external vision and see, why is the father chastising one child and giving, so many nice rewards to the other child? Does it mean that they don't love their children equally? No, it's actually love in context. Love to what that child needs to gain the topmost thing. So sometimes the child that's misbehaving, in order to live a happier life, they need to be corrected. And so in this instance, we see the washerman, he gets corrected by Krishna. But later in this instance, Krishna actually seeks out Sudama. So we can see the contrast when we approach the Lord with love, when we approach the Lord of wanting to serve, when we approach the Lord with wanting to reciprocate, recognizing that the Lord has actually provided us everything and that at every moment we can be overwhelmed with gratitude, that he's given us the air, he's given us this body, he has given us eyes to see, mouth to speak, ears to hear. He's provided all of these things that I need, and in such a personal and loving way. And so when our heart is overwhelmed with that gratitude, naturally it brings a sense of humility and a sense of desire to reciprocate, the desire to give back. And so in this case, we see Sudama being like the good child who wants to reciprocate with the father. Unbeknownst, not knowing Krishna was coming, he just immediately is offering respects, offering worship, offering all kinds of articles of praise, making them comfortable, massaging their feet, whatever you need. And then he's a garland maker. That's his occupation. And so he's the best thing he has, the best thing he can do, he gives that lovingly to the Lord. He wasn't expecting this. The garland maker probably had, other things to, give these garlands to, but Krishna comes and he's like, you are the supreme object of everything. What little thing I can offer, let me give to you. And not only that, but he also gives it to the Lord's associates, to the Lord's friends who are also present with him. And so we can understand from this that our worship of God is not isolated. It's not merely me and God and no one else. A more holistic view is understanding that everything, aham sarvasya prabhavo, everything comes from the Lord, including all of these articles and all of these other living entities. If I am the son of the Lord, then so is everyone else around me, all these living entities. And we all each have a unique and special relationship with the Lord. And so it's very revealing what Sudama asks for. Because the Lord, we feel this even in our own way when someone does something nice for us, we may be inspired to reciprocate. What can I do for you? And so the Lord, being the supermost example of this, asks Sudama, what can I give you? What can I offer you? And there's a lot of instances of what people may ask for. And we see that this is one of the topmost instances. He could have asked for anything. He could have asked for an amazing palace. He could have asked for good health. He could have asked for strength throughout his life. He could have asked for power, abilities beyond. I mean, we're asking the Supreme Lord, who has all ability to give anything that we want. He could have asked for any of these things. But it's very telling that what he did ask for was unshakable devotion for the Lord, friendship with his devotees, and transcendental compassion for all living beings. That's very telling as to what is actually worth asking for, what is actually valuable. Because it's not that he was just humble and like, oh, I could have asked for $1 million, but I only asked for $10. No, he's actually asking for the most valuable thing. Because when we have this unshakable love for the Lord is actually conquered by that love. There may be so many people who are trying to conquer the Lord as an enemy, trying to overpower him with strength or defeat him in intelligence. But it's actually said, the Lord, you know, someone is the Lord if they have these 6 opulences in full. If they have all knowledge, they have all wealth, all renunciation, all beauty, all fame, and which one am I missing out?
Renunciation.
No, yeah, strength. All strength. Thank you, John. All strength. Thereby, if he has all of these things, then what I have as strength is really his, and he's giving it to me, and I can't overpower the reservoir of all strength. No one can defeat him in all of these things. And yet, that unconquerable Lord is able to be conquered by the love of his devotees. And we're in this special month of Kartik, where we very much focus on that idea that our love can actually bind the Lord. And it's not cheap. It does require our endeavor and our sincerity. But it's only by that love can the Lord be conquered. So these things that Sudama has chosen are very telling. Unshakable devotion for the Lord, the supreme soul of all. That requires a understanding of Krishna's position as the Supreme Lord. That why is he worth being devoted to? That actually anything that I like about this world, he is the reservoir of. I'm actually, if I think something is beautiful, I think this painting is nice. If I think, you know, they're very popular or they're attractive because they're popular or attractive because they're beauty, indirectly, we're actually appreciating Krishna because he's, as we spoke, is the reservoir of all those things. And all of these things that we see in the world are part and parcel of that. And he also asks for friendship with devotees, with other people who are also devoted to the Supreme Lord. And we can understand how valuable that is, because if we've ever experienced something that we enjoy, you know, I saw a really good show or I heard this really beautiful song, it intensifies when we're able to share that with somebody. And so when we are established, when we're developing this connection with Krishna, we can share that, we can cultivate that, and it will multiply when we're able to share that with others who are also one with us. There's an example that Uddhava later in this canto, he goes to Vrindavan to see the parents of Krishna who have been missing him. And Uddhava is just overwhelmed by the love and devotion that Krishna's parents have. Not like Krishna's father just starts glorifying the Lord and just saying all of the pastimes, and then he just gets so choked up with loving emotion that he cannot speak. Mother Yashoda's Krishna's mother Yashoda, she just in hearing about Krishna is so overwhelmed that it's described that torrents of tears are just flowing from her eyes, that her parental affection is overflowing. And that exchange, oh man, that is one of the greatest pleasures of life, being able to share that with someone. And Uddhava goes back to where he came from in Dwarka, I believe, and he tells people about the devotion of Krishna's parents, and it inspires them in their devotion. Like even when we go to the gym, for example, if we have an accountability person, it encourages us to go further. When we're studying something, when we're studying with people who are also studying that, we encourage each other to do better. We have an art or a trade, or like a painter. When we're associating with other painters, we can pollinate those ideas, and it can inspire us even further. What to speak of the topmost prize of devotion to the Lord? How even coming together in some small and humble way and speaking the glories of the Lord can encourage us to remember him, to awaken that dormant love that's in our heart. And lastly, Sudama asks for transcendental compassion for all living beings. There's a very interesting adjective that he puts there. Not just compassion, but transcendental compassion for all living beings. It's said that devotees don't want to go back to the kingdom of God alone. It's also said that when there is this devotion for the Lord, when that love for the Lord is turned to the living beings, it manifests as compassion, grace, as causeless mercy. There's a lot of difficulties that go on in the day-to-day world, in the practical world. A lot of miseries from our own minds, or the miseries from our body, or the miseries of natural disasters. And sometimes it can be easy, at least for myself, to kind of turn a blind eye to the suffering of the world in the pursuance of something spiritual. I was just hearing a lecture this morning speaking about how we can really relish and experience the tangible joy of spiritual life when we don't turn a blind eye to the suffering of the world. When we do recognize that there are people suffering, and that this transcendental knowledge, this gift, this divine love, this bhakti, is the ultimate remedy that will lift these living entities and ourselves and each other out of the trenches of this suffering. And so when we really cultivate that compassion by seeing the things that are happening in the world and being inspired to become an instrument of the divine's grace, we can become that bridge through which people can connect with the goal of life. I can speak for myself in saying that I wouldn't be able to be here happily living a spiritual life if it weren't for someone who went through the trouble of informing me about it and telling me about it and taking the time to cultivate me, to teach
Who
me.
is that?
Hmm?
Who was that?
Ultimately, it was Srila Prabhupada for me. And his representative, Adikarta Prabhu, and many other devotees who personally cultivated me and taught me and guided me and directed me, gave me shelter. Their compassion is what is allowing me to now develop relationships with the devotees and to have some connection with the Supreme Lord. And when we are able to connect with that, we feel this divine ananda or bliss. And when we're overflowing with that bliss, naturally, we just want to share it with the world. And that gives the deepest sense of purpose, the deepest feeling of relishment. And so I'll end with just appreciating that Srila Prabhupada has been the emblem of this verse of exemplifying unshakable devotion for Krishna. Coming over in late age, 70 years, 2 heart attacks on the Jaladuta, on the steamship traveling to America. And all taking, he could have just retired, been happy with his own devotion to Krishna, but instead he took the trouble to share it with the world. And no matter what difficulties came, his devotion was unshakable. When he was in the New York winter, he had never seen snow before. When he didn't have funds to take care of himself, he came to America with 40 rupees, and nobody used rupees in the 70s. There's no exchange for it. And so many more difficulties that he faced. And yet his devotion was unshakable. And as far as friendship with devotees, when he came to America, he had no associates. It was just him. And he made devotees, and he made friendship with those devotees. And as that core team developed, he then shared it with the world. Out of deep compassion for all living beings, he shared it. This is actually in New York is where this happened, in 26 2nd Avenue. They went out to Thompson Square Park and shared this process of loving the Lord. And from that, it just spiraled and has been shared and spread all throughout the world. So he is a wonderful example through which we can follow the footsteps of him and Sudama and approaching the Lord with love. Because as the purport says, it's actually in our best interest. We'll be happy. Krishna will be happy. And all living entities throughout the world can be happy through this sublime process. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Now I'd like to open up for any questions or comments or discussion. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
You're describing Krishna as a Supreme Lord, God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the verses talk about his mother, his father. He spoke about his mother and his father. He spoke about, when I first heard Balaram, his brother, God's got a brother? I didn't know he had a brother. Can you explain those things? How could Krishna have a brother and a mother if he's God?
Yes.
It's something that might occur to somebody just hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's stated that Krishna is Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. That the Supreme Lord is the source of all things. He has a spiritual body. It's eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. And that this Supreme Lord is Rasaraj, that by his will, although he is the source of all things, and thereby, in that sense, he has no father, he is the source of all living entities. There's no one who gives birth to him. He is the origin, and there's no other origin but him. But he's Rasaraj, which means that he is the king of enjoying loving relationships. And so similarly, we have our loving relationships in this world. So why would the Supreme Lord not be able to experience those same loving exchanges? So in this way, knowing that all things come from the Lord, we can understand that personalities or souls like Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, they play the part of Krishna's parents so that the Lord can experience these loving exchanges. Yeah. Later on, even in this chapter, he has other parents, and they realize, oh, Krishna's God, like, yeah, and so that comes with a mood of awe and reverence and a deference. But Krishna wants that sweet, loving relationship, so he speaks to them in such a way which will invoke the parental affection. So that's a little explanation there.
They forget that he's God.
They forget that he's God. Yes, he has a internal illusory potency through which helps facilitate the loving exchanges. So we can understand that love is actually the highest thing. Did I miss anything? Add anything, Adi Purush?
Of course, no, really. You might mention that since Krishna can do anything, he can expand himself, which is kind of a radical concept that we don't usually hear about every day, that he can appear in two different ways at the same time, even though he's one person. So he appears as Balaram, his first expansion. And so when it talks about the two lords, it was the two ways that the Lord was manifesting for the sake of showing camaraderie. Actually, Balaram illustrates service of God. He's showing us it's Krishna appearing as a servant of God in order to show us how to serve God. And it's beyond logic, far beyond our experience or imagination. But anyway, this is what's described. And it might be a little difficult to take that in. I can remember saying to the devotee, wait a minute, God has a brother? How can he have a brother? He's God. Krishna, Balaram is a manifestation of Krishna as the brother of Krishna.
Yeah. Thank you. I remember hearing that if everything that the Lord did was conceivable, then he wouldn't be God. So he can definitely do a lot of amazing things. Bhima Prabhu, you have your hand raised.
Haribol Manohara Prabhu, Maharaj, future Maharaj. I would just like to say, in regards to the inconceivability, that Krishna gives us this gigantic clue called existence, and that we can see all around us. And that this idea that Krishna has all this, Krishna is has the most strength, or Krishna has the most beauty, it's actually erroneous. It's that Krishna, and he says it in the Bhagavad Gita, I am that strength of the strong. I am that beauty, that spark of splendor. Whenever you see anything splendorous, which means beautiful, attractive in the universe, that is me showing myself. I am that love. This is why we have Bhakti yoga. It's the hooking up, the yoga of love. Krishna is brotherhood. That's what Krishna is. That's Krishna's manifestations all around us when we share with the other devotees, when we laugh with the other devotees in a devotional setting, Vaishnav humor. This is Krishna. Krishna says, I'm there whenever two are gather in my name. And there's always two, even when we're alone chanting, there's always two. It's you and Krishna. So we got him on that. We know that Krishna is there because that's 1, 2, and Krishna promised that he'd be there. So we have to try to understand that there's no Krishna who has these pastimes going on separately from us, but these pastimes of the washerman, reflects those who choose to follow the government. As you said, we must pay attention to the sufferings of the world, and the most of the suffering comes from authorities other than the divine source of authority, which is Krishna. It's the governments that cause these things. It's the washerman was arguing for the sake of Kamsa, who he chose as his ultimate authority. I'm sorry, I'm getting wrestled by one of my horses here. The garland maker is simply, seeing the beauty of Krishna and then offering everything, knowing full well that all the flowers, I mean, we don't create the flowers, we don't create our own fingers, we don't create the movement of the muscles in our fingers, the intelligence. Krishna says, I am the intelligence. Everything that's going on around us is the story of Krishna. And then that's how we can remember Krishna at all times. That, it may be inconceivable to try to put it in our little skull cap, but ultimately, we are being shown Krishna's story, Krishna's Leela at all times. Prabhupada once said that it's the third-class devotee that only sees God in the deities. And it's the second-class devotee that is reminded of Krishna in the other devotees. But it's a first-class devotee that sees Krishna in all living things, in the eyes, that the eyes are the altar, and Krishna and Radharani are there in the eyes. So I'm sorry, I can't continue because I'm getting beaten up right now. So thank you very much, Manohara, that your class and when I hear someone like yourself, so intelligent, well-spoken, articulate, handsome, I say to myself, I must be in the right place because these are the right people. And these are the people I want to hang with. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for being with us and for taking the time to speak to us today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You're very kind, Bhima Prabhu. Thank you very much. Yeah, these are very wonderful points. And can inspire us to try to see the Lord present everywhere. I remember hearing this verse. It's so interesting. It's so telling. Krishna is so intelligent. He speaks that if you see anything as separate from me, that is to be understood as my illusory potency. So even the idea of seeing something as separate from Krishna is also related to Krishna. So as you mentioned, if I'm seeing this table as having nothing to do with Krishna, well, he says, well, that's actually that idea, that very idea itself is my illusory potency. That illusory potency is Krishna, therefore that concept is related to Krishna, that table is related to Krishna, everything is related to Krishna somehow or other through his superior internal potency or his external manifestations. So it's to give a quick explanation of that, it said that there's like matter composed of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, things like this, and that there's a prakriti or spiritual energy, which is eternal, full of awareness and spiritual bliss. And so those are two, Krishna says those are his two energies. And so we're in a world of his inferior energy, and we want to go back to the spiritual world where everything is of his internal spiritual energy. But both are the Lord's energy. And we cultivate that consciousness even while we're in this world. Our consciousness is that of the spiritual world. So it's about 8:01. So the just not coming. Just not coming.
Probably 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So a few minutes if there's any other questions or comments.
In the Mayavad school of thought, they're saying that everything is one. Everything is one. And the Vaishnava perspective is Achinta Veda Viditattva. Yes, there's a oneness, but simultaneously, inconceivably, there's also a difference. That definitely we're manifested from the Lord, and we're part of the Lord, part and parcel of the Lord. But for the sake of loving exchange, like you were explaining so nicely, we have the capacity. Without a lover and a beloved, you can't have love. So in that sense, we are, by Krishna's arrangement, we're allowed to be separate, even though we are simultaneously part and parcel of God. So the all is one idea is incomplete. Although Krishna has his Brahman feature, he also manifests by expansion, Radharani, and by his expansion of all living entities, other personalities, so that there can be loving exchanges, and that we can offer something. And it's much more of a complete understanding. Simultaneously one, but inconceivably also different. I love you means there's two guys, right? Oh, goes Prabhupada.
Manohar, do I have time for one more question?
Sure, Prabhu, yes.
Yeah, you were talking how somebody took the trouble to share bhakti with you, and I was thinking, yeah, somebody took the trouble, overcame my resistance when they were sharing bhakti with me. At this point, I don't seem to have any resistance. I don't resist bhakti, but I'm not a pure devotee still. How come? How come I'm not a pure devotee yet? I don't resist. The bhakti is there, Srila Prabhupada is there, but I'm a mess. How come?
No. Yeah.
I said, how do you approach things? We can pick it up in the afterglow.
Okay, after. Okay. Hare Krishna. Manohar, wonderful class. Thank you. Thank you. We'll miss you. Come back. Okay, camera's on if you can, please. Scarlett, thank you. Thank you. Bhakti Devi, thank you. Ishwari Sundari, thank you. Wow. Amrita Kishore, beauties. The Bhakti beauties are here. Bhima, you're not a beauty. Come on. Hide.
Oh, come on, man. That's why I ran to the camera. You were naming off the beauties.
Amish Prabhu, thank you. Nandini Radhika ki jai. Okay. This is Afterglow. I'm not sure if Manohar will join. Hey, Mangi, good to see you. Thank you. Okay, yeah, they're bowing us down. So I'll ask another time. No problem. Would anyone else like to share anything at this point? Monday morning, it's kind of raining. But as Bhima Prabhu has instructed us lovingly, Krishna Leela at all times. I like it. Nice.
Prabhu, did Manohara, did I miss it? Did he mention what how to get out of this mess that we're in and become pure devotees?
No, he's not here. He's not here. He left.
Oh,
Oh no, hold on. Manohar does. He's here. Manohar. How come Bhima and I are in this mess?
why are we shattered all over Manhattan?
Manohar
Where is
ji.
he?
Let me see if I can ask him to unmute. He is unmuted. I'm asking him to start video. Okay, where is he? Manohar ji, welcome back. Yeah, we're eager
Don't try to escape.
to hear your reflections on the question.
So might we not be a pure devotee yet, although we are convinced about the process and are practicing? Well, although I'm not qualified to speak, I can give a few thoughts from what I've heard. One,
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada says it's a process. Someone asked Srila Prabhupada how long it takes to become purified. He said about 40 years or so. Although it can't happen instantaneously, generally it's a process because we've been associating with this material energy, with these lower qualities for so long that it's become very much ingrained in our subtle body. And so as we're practicing this, we're gradually purifying this Chaito Darpana Marjanam. That gradually, by this process of chanting, associating with devotees, all of these wonderful processes of devotion, we're cleansing the mirror of the heart because it has accumulated this dust and dirt for so long. To refer to the nectar of devotion, it speaks about the actual process line itself. At first, it starts with a little bit of faith, and then associating with devotees, we pick up the practice, and then eventually we get into a anarta nivritti stage, which is the bulk of the process, where we're actually engaging through the cleaning of the heart and getting all of those subtle desires out, all those subtle propensities to control or to lord it over, whatever it may be, that we're gradually taking out of our heart. And Krishna sees our sincerity and he arranges things personally in such a way where we're able to remove those things and gradually return to our original purified state as pure spirit souls and pure devotees of the Lord. Yeah. So those are a few thoughts on that. But yeah,
Manohara Prabhu.
nectar devotion.
Thank you. Bhima Prabhu, would you like to
Okay.
resist anything of anything that he said? Any resistance
That,
to what he said?
that's my dharma, is to all truth and to fight it out. That's where I came to understand that Krishna's Leela is going on at all time, because I'm continually getting smashed, and then I learn a little lesson, and then Krishna comes at me like I do some demoniac thing, and then Krishna comes at me and smashes me or drags me down or splits me in half or humbles me, and then I learn the lesson, and that's how I kind of came to a conclusion that Krishna is performing this Leela at all times, that at least if I'm hanging out with the devotees, I'm close enough to Krishna that he's going to take the time to do what's necessary to correct myself. And that's, whether we're a mess or whether we, can get it all straight in 4 years or.
We lost Bhima, but I really like the point that he made. When we resist, Krishna doesn't give up on us. He smashes us. He lovingly detaches us. He's always there at all times.
Yeah.
During the resistance or when we're cooperative, he's there. He never gives up on us. He sends a devotee. He sends prasadam. He sends a realization or a beat down or an argument. And then
He sends Ananda Bihari.
Yes, this is a very important principle to be able to imbibe as we experience turbulences. This verse, Tutena Kupam Shamikshamano, that whatever happens, we actually accept as the mercy and grace of the Lord. That exercise can be very difficult, but when it's exercised, when it's developed, we can take faith in any circumstance, high or low, difficult or hot or cold, praise or dishonor, all of it we can see. This is actually mercy. I actually may have deserved, due to my karma, a lot worse than this, but really I'm getting something wonderful. Even Krishna is handling the washerman. The washerman still got a great boon, getting liberation. So
yeah,
in this
deal,
way,
good deal.
we can cultivate that. Sorry.
I said good deal for washerman.
Good deal. Good deal.
I wanted to say something. Yeah.
Oh, please.
Haribo? Yes,
Hare
I just
Krishna.
wanted to say something, a little realization I'm having here. If you can see the thing here, I have my electric line up here for the horses to keep them in. But I'm going down the line, and I noticed that all the line has been chewed, and this is due to coyotes coming onto our property, which is actually a good thing because they take care of all the varmints that eat the vegetables and the grain and stuff. But anyway, so we have this border in our lives called the 4 regulative principles. And that if we allow our more carnivorous nature, it's sort of like chewing the line. So what I have to do is I have to increase the voltage so that when the coyotes put their mouths to the line in order to get in, to cross the barrier, to go beyond the regulated principles of staying in the woods, they get a good shock. So Krishna does that with us, that he gives us these boundaries. And then if we don't obey them, if we do something as belligerent, and some of us do, as belligerent to knowing the truth and yet not following it, Krishna has to turn up the heat. And, and I was just having that realization that I had to turn up the heat in order to keep the coyotes out of the fields. So this is how he takes care of our mess. He turns up the heat. So when it comes on, when we get that shock of realization, then Krishna, then we can be reminded that it's Krishna that's teaching us a lesson, and that includes disease, sickness, old age, and all the other wonderful things that the material world has to offer us.
Thank you, B. Make sure you offer that electricity to Krishna so that coyotes get prasadam every time they get zapped.
Wonderful analogy. I came up with that on the spot, imagine. Yes, and intensifying the voltage of our bhakti. Very much important. And also, to get that strength, we have sadhu sangha, like defenses associating with Bhima Prabhu, someone who can help and reinforce and check in and turn up the voltage when needed. Throughout that process of nectar devotion, all the way up to the fruit of prema, there is sadhu sangha. And so when we have that association, it helps us increase that voltage of our bhakti. So, and especially when we're going through that anartha nivritti phase, we're really uprooting a lot of things, and it can be unpleasant sometimes. Sometimes it's not always unpleasant. Sometimes we get nice prasadam or Krishna arranges to remove something painlessly, but it can be challenging. And that sadhu sangha gives us the brace and the support that we need. And once we get through that anartha nivritti stage, then we can get nishta, we can get fixed, we can get taste, and eventually to bhava, and ultimately prema, divine love for God, in a purified state at every state. That's just why Sudama is so brilliant in asking, may I always have friendship with the devotees. Because through that friendship, we can get through. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Manohara.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. It was very nice spending time with you. Thanks for being our bhakti voltage. Bhima Prabhu, anytime you feel you need a zap, then let me know. I'll come in. And I'll bring Manohar with me. We'll turn up your heat. Okay, Hare Krishna.